In this mini lecture, we'll be looking at conventional ways to combine sentences. We'll assess your capacities for catching and repairing run-ons and comma splices, and we'll look at changing conventions regarding the comma. Okay, you've heard me say this before, but let's say it again. When you're writing, write freely. Never think about editing rules while composing unless you can do it without anxiety and without looking up rules. Otherwise, just write in your own voice. Let it flow. Then, when you've got a draft that you feel pretty good about in terms of content and structure, read it aloud and listen to its rhythms. Try to sense the boundaries between thoughts. Do some of your sentences seem awkwardly fused? Try to fix them by feel. Often you can do this. Your own sensibilities will let you fix the sentence without ever thinking about grammar. But you need to know your capacities. Remember this example from the Sentence Boundaries lecture video? Well, did you sense the problem when you read it? An awkward fusion of two sentences right here? This is what we call a comma splice. Do you struggle with these? Why do many writers struggle with this kind of situation? Well, let's think about the sentence. In any discourse, we have two contrary tasks. On the one hand, we have to separate complete thoughts within boundaries. On the other hand, we've got to put these complete thoughts together fluidly. If I'm speaking to you face to face, I have all kinds of tools to do this. I can use rhythm. I can pitch my voice up and down. I can use inflections. I can even use body language. But if I write a text, I have very limited resources. I have words and punctuation, and really nothing else. That's why I have to pay special attention as a writer to the conventions for combining ideas and sentences. Okay, let's return to our definition of a sentence. It is a syntactically complete thought, which has at least one independent clause. And remember, we said that that means a subject and a verb structure that can stand alone. That can stand alone. Well, that means there's a feeling and rhythm of completeness. Nothing more is needed. But of course, one sentence by itself won't accomplish too much. I'm going to want to combine these complete thoughts. Well, I could just put one sentence after another, and that's obvious, and I can do that, but we have to notice that sentence boundaries create firm separation between ideas. On page 35 of Harvey's text, he has an original and a revision of a sample text. And he shows that in the original, the hard boundaries between thoughts actually make the passage less clear than combining them. And sometimes we're going to want to combine more than one independent clause in one sentence. This creates a closer fusion of ideas, lets us emphasize logical connectors. So our challenge is to fuse the sentences without confusing the reader. When we do that, we create what's called a compound sentence. And there's a conventional way to join independent clauses within a sentence. According to anthropologists, human beings first emerged in Africa about 200,000 years ago, and then this remarkable species migrated to the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and across the oceans. Okay, there are two independent clauses there. What joins them? Well, the word and does. This is a coordinating conjunction. This is one of two conventional options for joining things that could be sentences. The first is a semicolon, And Harvey says that a semicolon marks the end of an independent clause, but it then indicates a link to the next clause. And one of his examples follows. With a semicolon there, you get a pleasant little feeling of expectancy. But then you see the semicolon? It tells us there is more to come. 2 complete sentences joined with a semicolon. The other option is the conjunction. Conjunctions bear some of the weight of joining clauses together and often work with commas. Now, we try to limit the amount of grammar and the number of grammar terms that we use, but we do have to mention coordinating conjunctions. These join items of the same form, noun with noun, clause with clause, etc., and they are conventionally used to join independent clauses. Now here's the thing. There are only 7 conjunctions, and you can remember them with the acrostic boy fans: but, or, yet, for, and, nor, and so. That's it. There are no more. Now you should memorize those 7 conjunctions. Why? Because they're so easily confused with another group of words, which we call conjunctive adverbs. Here's some examples. The conjunction and has the same logic as conjunctive adverbs like also, in addition, moreover, furthermore, and there are more of those. But has the logic of although, or however, or nevertheless. For has the logic of thus, therefore, consequently, subsequently. Now, the reason we have to talk about this is that there's a danger in using these adverbs. They're perfectly fine, but you can't replace boy fans conjunctions in a compound sentence. Consumers benefit from free market competition, however, workers without money cannot participate in a free market. We see that word however. It's got the same logic as but here it's causing a problem. Now there's nothing wrong with using conjunctive adverbs, but when you use them between independent clauses, you have to be careful. You can do it, but you need to first use a semicolon. Competition, semicolon, however, comma, workers, that's fine. Or you can have a sentence break and then use a comma. Competition, period, however, comma, workers. Or you can move the conjunctive adverb in the sentence. Competition, period, workers without money, comma, however, cannot. Now notice that in all these cases, the commas come before or after. Okay, now we're ready to define the problem. Run-on sentences. You may have seen that comment on your papers at times, and you may have wondered, what in the world does that mean? Well, these are sentences which pile up chunks of material that a reader struggles to handle. Now, this doesn't mean that it's a long sentence. You can have very long sentences that are not run-ons because they handle materials appropriately. Consider this. We find an example of contrastive rhetoric in the distinction between low and high context cultures, a challenge which troubles many international trade negotiations as low context Westerners try to intuit from silences and hints the real message conveyed by prospective high context partners who may not clearly articulate their concerns or intentions. Well, that's challenging, but grammatically, it's not a problem. Rather, it's a matter of conventional grammar. In a run-on sentence, independent clauses are incorrectly joined within one set of boundaries. Perhaps the most common kind of run-on is a comma splice, an attempt to join independent clauses with only commas. A social fact is real. It's a complete sentence. Comma. It is real in its consequences. Another complete sentence. The only thing between them is a comma. Consumers benefit from free market competition, however. Remember this one? We see this is really a comma splice. The conjunctive adverb is not a boyfriend's conjunction, and the only thing joining it is really the comma. Many comma splices involve conjunctive adverbs. Okay, let's practically think about how you check your writing for run-ons. Well, as we've said, read aloud, listen for rhythms, be sensitive to awkwardly joined sentences, and, if possible, fix the problems without ever thinking about any of this. But, if necessary, check the rules of punctuation. First, do you have two or more independent clauses? If you don't have at least two independent clauses, you cannot possibly have a run-on or a comma splice. Second, if you have two independent clauses, are they joined by a semicolon or a comma plus a boyfriend's conjunction? If so, you're okay. But if not, then you need to revise the sentence. Now, fortunately, we have 4 different options for fixing a comma splice. First, we just separate the two sentences. We're going to use this example, period, however, comma. All right? Second, we can replace the comma with a semicolon. Third, we can use a true boyfriend's conjunction. So instead of however, we can say but. Notice I removed the comma afterwards. Finally, we can subordinate one of the independent clauses so it can't stand on its own. Although consumers benefit from the free market competition, comma, etc. Any of these works. Okay, let's see how good your ear is. Here are some sample expressions. Are they comma splices, run-ons, or conventionally correct sentences? Here's the first one. The second. The third. The fourth. The fifth. Well, how did you do? You don't have to tell me, but that first one, that's a comma splice right after the word decades. The second, well, that's a run-on. There's nothing joining the two independent clauses. The third, that is a conventionally correct compound sentence. The fourth, that's a comma splice right after the word equally. And the fifth, again, a comma splice because the word nevertheless is not a boyfriend's conjunction. Now, we've been talking a lot here about commas, and Harvey says commas are so flexible, the rules for using them are complicated. They also keep changing, and he says an 18th century version of this text would seem to us to have far too many commas. Comma splices today are losing some of their stigma. You may actually find them in edited texts, for example, novels. The comma is beginning to seem more robust today, more capable of joining complete thoughts. However, many readers, especially those who have been trained by their teachers to beware of comma splices, do notice them. Comma splices and run-ons are widely recognized even by ordinary readers, and they become grounds for judgment. He can't even write an English sentence. It is a crucial skill to be able to join independent clauses according to conventions and to catch and correct run-ons and comma splices.